Well, I'm David Parker, as many of you will know, and it gives me very great pleasure to welcome you all, our sponsors, MAN, our directors and friends and members of the press, whether you're here with us in Hong Kong or there in London. We welcome you all to this launch of the MAN Asian Literary Prize Shortlist. This is the very first time we've done a launch in such a high-tech way, so let's pray that everything works as it should. I know that it will, because MAN have been very generous, not only in providing us rooms and equipment, but also their wonderfully helpful staff who've set all this up. The MAN Asian Literary Prize is at the beginning of a long journey with a very ambitious destination. We aim to give the best writers of the Asian region the kind of global recognition that British, Commonwealth and Irish writers get from the Man Booker Prize. That's the reason for today's hookup with Monica Ali in London. Actually, we've been pursuing Monica for quite a while to be one of our judges, because as a highly accomplished writer herself, she knows quality when she sees it. Our judges are central to our aspiration for the MAN Asian Literary Prize to be respected around the world. The international press are important, both here and in London, because we need you to help bring our shortlisted writers to the reading public everywhere. Our aim is to have people everywhere buy and read and talk about these shortlisted books, to make them household names in this region and well beyond. Now, as I say, that's a long journey, but today we take an important step with the launch of the 2010 shortlist. Now, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce Monica Ali, whom we can see before us. I think, as everyone here would know, Monica's debut novel, Brick Lane, was a sensational success and was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize and later made into a movie, which I'm sure many of us will have seen. She's also published Alentejo Blue, 2006, and In the Kitchen, 2009. And I think, as many of us know, another bestseller is Waiting in the Wings. Monica is one of Britain's leading literary figures. So Monica, it's a great pleasure to hand over to you and to ask you to announce to us the 2010 Man Asian Literary Prize shortlist. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to read these in alphabetical order, and I apologise in advance if I mispronounce any of the names. The first shortlisted novel is Bi Feiyu's Three Sisters, a moving exploration of Chinese family and village life during the Cultural Revolution that moves seamlessly between the epic and the intimate, the heroic and the petty, illuminating not only individual lives but an entire society within a gripping tale of familial conflict and love. The second book is Manny Joseph, Serious Men, a seriously funny, ingenious novel, part satire, part comedy of manners, and an intelligent commentary on both Dalit Brahmin issues and academic science. Tavish Kher, The Thing About Thugs, third book on the list. Crossing Continents and Centuries, Kher's inventive multiple narrative subtly subverts expectation and post-colonial narrative traditions by simultaneously echoing Dickens's London and inserting a totally fresh voice at its centre. Kenzaburo O, The Changeling, a richly complex work that centres on a tale of brotherhood and loss and plunges deep into the nature of artistic desire and ambition, at once questioning every impulse and yet remaining stunningly assured. And the final book on the shortlist is Yoko Ogawa, Hotel Iris. In beautifully sparse, elegant prose, Ogawa lays bare the dark side of intimacy, the nature of obsession, and the indefinable qualities of what bonds one human being with another.
Very much, Monica. Can I hand over to Harrison, who's going to help people ask questions, and if you don't mind taking a few questions from us.
Sure.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest in what you've just said.
So perhaps I might just open by one question that a lot of people have been asking us, and asking me in particular, is after reading lots of Asian books and then deciding the long list and now the short list, what do you feel is your impression of the state of Asian literature right now?
I think it's thriving. I mean, one of the pleasures for me of doing the reading for this competition is one of the pleasures of reading fiction in general, which is that it opens up new worlds, and that was very much the case with the reading for this prize. So one of the books on the long list was Below the Crying Mountain by Griselda Yates, and that was about the Moro rebellion in the 1970s in the southern Philippines, the Muslim rebellion there during the 70s. Another long-listed book was Anosh Irani's Dahanu Road, about 3 generations of Zoroastrians fleeing persecution from Iran to Bombay. And I could pick out numerous other examples as well. So there was that sense of bringing the news quite often, of grappling with history, and then of course exploring what fiction does best, which is what is the nature of the human condition, and all of those things were present in the reading. So I'd say that Asian literature is absolutely thriving.
Great, thanks. And if I could also perhaps just ask, when reading through the books, if there's any, because we have a few publishers and a few literary agents here, what is the key thing that perhaps would make a book stand out and worthy of the Man Asian Literary Award amongst a sea of great, fantastic Asian writing? What's perhaps something that captures your eye or has caught the judge's eye in particular this year?
Well, we judged in the end purely on literary excellence. So perhaps I speak for myself, but probably my co-judges as well, that was the only criteria that we used. So we weren't particularly looking for a story that explained history, or particularly looking for a story that that brought the news. I mean, those things were welcome and engaging and refreshing, but in the end, literary excellence is what it's all about.
Okay, great. Any questions from this side? Okay.
I've got a question. Hello, Monica. You just mentioned your co-judges. Was there a lot of infighting between you, or did you sort of come to a fairly unanimous?
Well, luckily we're separated by continents, because Sue Min is in Australia and Homie's in the States, and I'm over here. So, you know, there was no actual physical violence involved. No, we actually did have a good degree of concurrence. We had some interesting debates, and of course, there's never going to be complete agreement on each and every single book. But overall, I'd say we'd actually had quite a remarkable degree of togetheriness in a judging sense.
What sort of things did you find yourself debating?
Well, I can think of books which one judge or another loved on first reading, that another judge was not so keen on the first place, but on second reading, after a discussion, came to an agreement that actually there was a lot more to it than first met the eye. So it was really, I mean, taste always comes into it. Let's not pretend that taste doesn't affect a literary prize judging process. Of course it must do. But we didn't have violent disagreements. We had a remarkable degree of similar lines of approach and thought, actually. But that doesn't mean that we had no interesting debates, because there were.
So if you say, perhaps, just to introduce, that was Sarah Passmore from RTHK Radio 3, who's doing a lot of things to support the prize this year.
Hi, Monica. You mentioned that you judged. Hi. You mentioned that you judged in the end purely on literary excellence. I was wondering if you could shed some light on what you think makes exceptional fiction.
Well, personally, in a reading experience, I'm not only looking to be informed, which is one of the things that I'd mentioned initially, but to be also touched and moved by the experience in some way, to connect with the character and to go along on the protagonist's journey with them, and for a writer to delve into the question, which is ultimately what all fine literature addresses, which is what is it that makes us human, what's the nature of the human experience, within that what is it to love and to be loved, how do we form our identities, how do we relate to one another, how do we understand ourselves, and to do that in language which is beautifully honed.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I was curious whether the shortlist, and maybe the long list as well, whether the books as a whole broke any new ground in terms of contemporary fiction.
I was thinking the other day about something that the poet Ted Hughes said about writers, in order to overcome their own internal censorship, being willing to play games, to experiment, to put on masks and to play, is what he said. And I think there's evidence of that in the shortlist, of a willingness to do that. So I could pick out Kensborough O, for example, and Tavish Care. That experimentation and playfulness is certainly there in their works and in others as well.
I had a quick question, actually. When you were discussing amongst the judges, was there any discussion about the fact that some of the works were in English and some were in translation? Did that ever come into the discussions between when you were making decisions?
I don't know, it never did. I mean, we remarked on translation a couple of times. Well, one of the books on the shortlist, in fact, Three Sisters, we discussed the fact that there is a sort of remarkable freshness about the vernacular voice, even though it's in translation. And it's always hard to know, if one can't read the original, which in these cases can't, what kind of job has been done on the translation, and if a book is perhaps lacking in some way, what to put down to the translation. That's a very thorny, knotty question. And it's very difficult to know. But the translator's job is woefully unsung, really. They are the unsung heroes of this process. And I often think that when my own books are translated, I wonder how something is going to be translated. Sometimes I have some interchange with a translator and we unravel something in order for it to speak to a different audience, and it has to be done another way. But most of that work is done in isolation, and it's a whole other area of creativity, and it gets, it's generally not very well paid, it's generally badly recognised. But in the case of the Man Asian Literary Prize, there is, I'm very glad to say, an award that goes to the translator of the work as well, if it hasn't been written originally in English, and I think that's a very good thing.
Okay, well, I think that concludes our Q&A from this side, Monica. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.